Eiyuden Chronicles Rising is a cute little bonus game created as a Kickstarter stretch goal for Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes. It actually came as a total surprise to me since I haven't been keeping up with any of the news. Luckily, I saw it on the Game Pass catalog as I was browsing to see what games Xbox had to offer on their service. Eiyuden Chronicles is something I've been interested in since they teased it, as I'm a fan of the game's inspiration, Suikoden, a classic title from the earlier PlayStation years. Since Rising takes place before the events of 100 Heroes, I'm curious if the plot and characters here will have any significance in the main game, or if they'll just make a cameo. Well, whatever the case may be, the game won't be coming out till next year, so there's no point in thinking about it right now. What I can focus on at the moment is my impression of Rising. For starters, the gameplay was not what I expected. I knew 100 Heroes was going to be turn-based, so I was expecting something similar to give me a small taste of what it was going to be like. Instead, I got a side-scrolling action-adventure game. I would be lying if I said I wasn't slightly disappointed, since I've been craving something turn-based to play for a while now. That said, this genre is still something I enjoy. Games with similar designs like Castlevania or the Metroid series opened me up to another world of exploration outside of the traditional JRPGs, where finding power-ups and backtracking was a key part of gameplay. It would be unfair to compare a small indie game like Rising to something so established and perfected though. Still, I can look at what made games like that great, despite that on paper, the idea seems repetitive and boring, because at times, that's how Rising felt. It wasn't a terrible game, but it had no strengths to draw on. There was nothing that really jumps out at me and makes the game memorable. Like if I were to think back on some of my favorite games, there would be one line I could use to describe why I like it so much. For example, with Ys, it was the heart-pumping, fast-paced action combat. Or with Kiseki, it was the expansive story and characters spanning over 9 games thus far. Rising is just a typical side-scrolling game with standard adventure exploration and mechanics, a bland story, flat characters, and average level designs. I get that I may be coming off as being overly critical given that it was created as a stretch goal, but if I look at a game of similar circumstance, like the highly successful Curse of the Moon, it's not impossible to create something with a little more substance. Rising's gameplay loop is pretty simple, with lackluster concepts, so there was a little difficulty in staying immersed. In the beginning, the main character CJ finds herself in a small struggling town that just opened up their mindsight to adventurers looking for fame and fortune. She's a good kid who helps the town grow to become prosperous while looking for treasure of her own. So that's what most of the game is, doing repetitive fetch quests for forgettable NPCs. Going into dungeons, gathering materials, turning in the quest, and then rinse and repeat as more tasks demanding higher quality materials were thrown at me. Grinding is typically not something I would consider to be particularly entertaining, so having the core gameplay loop be entirely focused on this sets the game back a bit. Gameplay is further dulled by the shallow mechanics and designs. The maps were stale, lacking any verticality that other 2D adventure games have. 99% of the time, I was only moving to the left or the right in a straight line, which is understandable in the beginning when skills are limited. But even after obtaining double jump and high jump, there wasn't much change. The mundane exploration could have been improved if there was an activity that was more interesting, like solving puzzles that block progression, and not just the simple logic puzzles. Utilizing more maze-like routes that take me back to where I started or having multiple ways to reach a destination would have been cool too. There was one place in Snow Peak I liked that had a path split that would lead to the same destination but with different obstacles. The enemies patrolling the dungeons didn't offer much to enhance the whole adventuring business either. Their behaviors were pretty uninteresting alone, and they had no synergy with each other. They have simple attack patterns like gargoyles swooping down at characters, or the bulky humanoid dragons just swinging in front of them. The boss's super obvious telegraphs also ruined some of the challenge in learning the fight by making it too easy to see their attacks coming. The Witch is one of the few monsters I did like since they had a shield that needed to be destroyed by magic, and they were slightly difficult to hit. Combat does become a bit more entertaining once more abilities are unlocked, such as combo extenders, elemental imbuements, and new directional attacks. Initially, the combat starts off pretty basic. In dungeons, only one character is active at a time. They each just have one attack and one special ability. The special abilities offer some utility that could be used for exploration or defense. Strangely, they never felt rewarding to use defensively. For instance, CJ's dash was great for dodging attacks or moving to an enemy's rear, but it felt better as a way to get through levels faster. Longer combos help the combat feel a bit better by decreasing the kill time and making the pacing feel a bit faster. However, it was still mostly just mashing the same button repeatedly, which wears out the fun pretty quickly. Link attacks are really the most interesting part. It functions like a combo extender while swapping between characters for some big damage. This is also the only way to do some really cool unique attacks, like being able to smash an enemy into the ground. While combat does have some highlights once all the upgrades are unlocked, it just wasn't enough to create something captivating. I had to take breaks while playing so I wouldn't get tired of it. There were also a few design choices I didn't get, like having enemies only respawn after re-entering a dungeon. With a good portion of the game requiring some backtracking, it often caused areas to feel barren, though the availability of fast travel points did help alleviate some of this. I actually really appreciate how spread out and how plentiful they are. It's such a great way to reduce the amount of redundant walking, especially with the slow character movement. Even with CJ's dash ability, if I had to walk everywhere, I would be pretty annoyed. The lack of speed also bleeds into the gameplay a bit, causing the pacing to feel a bit sluggish. The slight delay in item drops and pickups also forced me to slow down some more. If I wasn't in pickup range, I would have to walk back to it or leave it. Typically, I like to be able to kill things, get my item, and keep moving, but that's not always possible. At least Rising has some charming art that somewhat takes my focus away from the more boring elements. The background was beautifully designed with vibrant colors to make the environment stand out. The fresh look of the levels were very appealing and gave a sense of wonder during exploration as new locations were discovered. Combined with the cutely drawn characters that used adorable emotes during expositions, the game's art is the best part of the whole experience. If only the animations were slightly better, it would have been visually gorgeous all around. Sometimes characters will look a bit awkward, like when CJ cheats or draws out her weapon, like there were a few frames missing. The way characters attack and the hit reactions of enemies also didn't look very natural at times. With so little of the game resonating with me, the story could have balanced the scales a bit if it also wasn't so uninspiring. The scope is very small, which isn't necessarily bad if they had something compelling to focus on, but they didn't. The primary focus is on CJ and the history of the town she's in. There are some secrets and twists, yes, but overall it just serves as an introduction for the bigger story to come. The backstories of the characters were okay, but with such a short game, there isn't enough time for them to develop or struggle with any meaningful challenges. They were completely one-dimensional, and it just felt like they were there to string the story along. Even with scenes that were clearly meant to pull on the heartstrings, I felt literally nothing, causing what should have been an impactful moment to fall completely flat on its face. I know I've complained about a lot, which doesn't give Rising a good look. I wish I had better things to say, but there is a lot to improve on. Although I don't want to leave the impression that it was all bad. Combat became more engaging when new abilities were unlocked that gave me new ways to fight. It would have just been better if there were more sophisticated enemies or layouts to try them on. Combined with the beautiful art, the world was amazing to see for the first time. Rising was good enough that I didn't totally hate playing through it. I just wanted a little bit more. With 100 heroes around the corner, I am slightly worried about what it will be like. Will it just be a generic clone of Suikoden without any identity? Or maybe I'll be absolutely surprised and love the game. Only time will tell. But at the moment, Rising isn't inspiring much confidence in me.